The message was short, crackling, and desperate. "Help us. Anyone, please. They've breached the outer shields." Static swallowed the voice, leaving only a long, thin hiss that bled into silence. Across the dark edge of the Perseid expanse, the listening post's operators sat frozen. Even after weeks of picking up fragments of distress calls from the Altari Commonwealth, this one sounded different. It wasn't just a cry for aid, it was the last gasp of a dying world. The signal carried the sound of people who knew no help was coming. Except this time, help was listening. Admiral Elias Rourke stood at the center of the observation deck aboard the UNS Vengeance, Earth's flagship dreadnought. His scarred hands were clasped behind his back, his eyes locked on the holographic projection of the sector. Red icons bloomed like infected wounds across the star map, each one a planet falling to the Kithaeron swarm. The alien fleet moved like a tide, relentless, precise, and merciless. "They're burning through Altari space faster than expected," said Commander Hale, his second-in-command. "Reports indicate 3 major cities already wiped from orbit. Civilian casualties are," he hesitated, then grimaced. "Catastrophic." Rourke's jaw tightened. The galaxy had always whispered about Earth. The Deathworld. The cradle of beasts. A place where storms could flatten cities and predators learned to stalk in packs. A planet that forged survivors from birth, or claimed them young. Humanity had been quiet since the Galactic Accords, content to trade, to watch, to build. But the call had been heard. And Earth was not quiet anymore. "Signal the fleet," Rourke ordered. "We move on the Commonwealth border immediately. Deploy Legion Strike Group 1. "Acknowledged, sir," Hale said, snapping a salute. "Should we issue a warning to the swarm?" Rourke's lips curled in something too cold to be a smile. "No warnings. No negotiations. They'll learn what it means to call Deathworlders to war." The deployment order echoed through the Vengeance's corridors, a low growl of engines answering in kind. Hundreds of ships fell into formation, dreadnoughts, carriers, corvettes, and the monstrous troop transports carrying Earth's infamous legions. Each soldier was a product of a planet that never stopped trying to kill them. They were the culmination of centuries of conflict, survival training, and genetic hardening. Exosuits hissed as they locked into place around towering forms. Helmets sealed with a magnetic click. Gauntlets powered up with a rising hum. To the rest of the galaxy, they were the Deathworld Legions, a name whispered with equal parts fear and awe. To themselves, they were simply humanity doing what it did best, surviving. By the time the fleet reached Altari space, the sky above the planet Seleucus burned. The invasion was in full swing. Kithaeron hive ships hung in low orbit, raining sporepods and living drop creatures into the cities below. The planet's defenders were scattered and broken, their orbital guns silenced. Through the viewport, Rourke watched fires bloom across the surface. "Open a channel," he said, his voice low and hard. The transmission cut through every frequency used by the Kithaeron fleet. For the first time since the war began, humanity spoke directly to its enemy. "This is Admiral Rourke of Earth," he said. "Your assault ends here. Withdraw or be destroyed." The reply came seconds later, wet and hissing, translated by the ship's AI. Deathworld voice. "Threat pattern detected. We consume. We grow. You will be biomass." Rourke didn't blink. "Then you'll die with full stomachs." He cut the channel. "Bring us in. All ships, fire at will." The void lit up. Rail cannons spat tungsten slugs at near-relativistic speeds, tearing through living hulls. Plasma lances carved glowing scars through the swarm's carriers. Fighters swarmed from the carriers like angry hornets, darting between flak bursts to pick off enemy sporeships before they reached the atmosphere. And then, when the sky was cleared enough to breach, the Deathworld legions descended. Drop pods slammed through Seleucus' upper atmosphere, streaking like meteors before crashing into city streets with bone-rattling force. Their doors exploded outward, disgorging soldiers in black armor that drank the firelight and gave nothing back. Seleucus survivors, huddled in the rubble, watched as the first humans emerged. They moved like predators, efficient, silent, unstoppable. Pushed to the governor's dome, came the command over Legion comms. Secure civilians. Kill anything with mandibles. Private Kira Vance shouldered her rail rifle and advanced through the shattered avenue, boots crunching over broken glass and burned chitin. The air reeked of ozone and blood. A Kitharon drone lunged from the wreckage, but her reflex shot took it mid-leap, splattering the pavement. Around her, the rest of her squad cut through the alien vanguard with brutal precision. They weren't fighting to hold ground, they were fighting to erase the enemy's presence from the city entirely. Through the smoke, she saw movement, small shapes, terrified and unarmed. Alt-Hari civilians, their feathered crests matted with ash. One of them stumbled forward, clutching a child. "You sent the call?" Kira asked through her suit's translator. The alien nodded weakly. We didn't think anyone would come." Kira's visor hid her expression, but her voice was steady. "You called." "We answered." Hours later, the city was eerily quiet. The swarm was gone, burned out, gunned down, driven back into orbit where Earth's fleet had already turned their ships into floating corpses. Admiral Rourke stood on the landing platform, the fires of Seleucus casting his armor in hellish orange light. The rescued governor bowed deeply, her voice trembling as she spoke. "We thought the galaxy had abandoned us. And then we heard your signal." Rourke glanced skyward, where the vengeance loomed like a steel god. "Humanity doesn't ignore cries for help," he said. "But we don't come gently, either." He turned to his officers. "Seleucus is safe. But this is only one world. The swarm won't stop." He looked back at the survivors, his voice dropping to a promise. "Earth has answered the call. And we will keep answering, until there's no one left to scream." The galaxy expected Earth to hold Seleucus. Instead, Earth went on the offensive. Admiral Rourke didn't wait for the Commonwealth to rebuild its defenses or debate strategies in their parliament halls. He ordered the fleet forward, deeper into the Perseid expanse, toward the very heart of the Kitharon swarm. "Sir," Commander Hale said quietly as the holomap filled with red icons, "the enemy outnumbers us 10-1. This is unprecedented." Rourke's voice was ice. "So is eating civilians alive." The fleet jumped again, hyperspace streaking the stars into burning threads before snapping back into reality above the Kitharon staging world. There it was, CHYRK Prime, a writhing jungle moon turned into a living hive. Orbit was choked with bioships, their pulsating hulls glistening wetly in the light of the system's star. Massive spore cannons jutted from the surface like claws, flinging pods into space. "Target priority is their spore cannons and orbital carriers," Rourke said. "We are not here to blockade, we are here to burn this nest to the ground." "Aye, Admiral." Deploying fire missions. The opening volley turned the void into a killing field. Dreadnought guns opened up first, slamming kilometer-long slugs into the swarm's heaviest hive ships, shattering them into clouds of ichor and bone fragments. Plasma batteries lit the sky in arcs of blue fire. Then came the fleet's most dreaded weapon, the orbital purge cannons. Their barrels rotated, locked, and released tungsten rods the size of skyscrapers. They plunged into CHYRK Prime's surface at hypersonic speed, detonating with the force of nuclear warheads. From orbit, the surface seemed to ripple, then erupt. Forests of fleshy hive structures vanished in expanding shockwaves, sending columns of flame hundreds of meters high. The swarm's answering scream reverberated through every comm channel, an unearthly chorus of rage and agony. Still, the swarm counterattacked. Bioships surged toward the fleet, vomiting clouds of chittering drones. Kitharon boarding worms slammed into the hulls of corvettes and frigates, chewing through armor to disgorge hordes of clawed warriors. But this time, the Deathworld legions were ready. Inside the UNS Vengeance, alarms blared as a boarding breach opened on Deck 12. A squad of legionnaires sealed the corridor, forming a wall of armored figures. The first Kitharon burst through, shrieking, and was immediately reduced to smoking paste under a wall of gunfire. "Hold this choke." Sergeant Kira Vance barked over the comms. "No quarter." The deck became a slaughterhouse. Each soldier's armor was a fortress of ceramic plating and powered musculature, letting them fight on even with shattered ribs or punctured lungs. Every trigger pull was a kill. Every step forward left alien corpses underfoot. When the last Kitharon finally died twitching on the deck, Kira keyed her comm. "Breach contained. Deck 12 secure." "Good," Rourke's voice rumbled over the channel. "Prepare for ground assault. I want this nest erased." The drop over CHYRK Prime was hell. Enemy spore flak filled the sky, streaks of acid green bursting around the descending pods. One transport took a direct hit, spiraling down in flames before it disintegrated in a blossom of fire. But the survivors made planet fall. Kira's pod hit hard, cratering the ground. She kicked the hatch open and stepped into a nightmare. The air was humid and stank of rot. Organic towers stretched toward the sky like grotesque cathedral spires, their surfaces crawling with bioluminescent parasites. The ground squelched underfoot, alive with pulsing veins. Her squad spread out in a combat wedge, rifles sweeping the shadows. "Objective is the primary queen node," she said. "We kill it, this world goes dark." "Understood," came the reply. Then the swarm came. They hit like a tidal wave, thousands of chitin-armored drones screeching from every direction. The Legion stood their ground. Rail rifles sang, each shot punching fist-sized holes through multiple targets. Grenades turned charging lines into sprays of shattered exoskeleton. Flamethrowers roared, filling the tunnels with burning ichor and the reek of cooked meat. Still, the Kitharon kept coming. For every one that fell, two more appeared, crawling over the corpses of their dead. Kira slammed a fresh mag into her rifle and snarled. "We're not dying here. Push forward." Her squad advanced, step by brutal step, until they reached the Queen's chamber. It was massive, a cavernous chamber throbbing with alien life. At its center pulsed the Queen node, an obscene, swollen creature suspended in webbed strands, birthing fresh warriors by the second. Kira raised her launcher. "For Salukar," she whispered, and fired. The rocket struck home. For a heartbeat, the Queen simply convulsed, then exploded in a wave of gore that coated the walls. The psychic wail of the swarm echoed across the battlefield, disorienting drones and sending them into a frenzy. It was the moment the legions had been waiting for. "Full assault!" Kira shouted. "Cleanse this nest." Hours later, the surface of CHYRK Prime burned. Legion banners stood amid the smoking ruins of the hive. The last survivors of the swarm were hunted down and executed where they hid. From orbit, Admiral Rourke surveyed the destruction. The moon's surface glowed with fresh craters, the hive structures nothing but ash. "Transmit a sector-wide message," he ordered. The comm officer nodded and opened the channel. "This is Admiral Rourke," he said, voice carrying across a dozen star systems. "CHYRK Prime is dead. The swarm can run, but they can't hide. We are coming for every nest, every world, every broodmother. Humanity answers every call for help, and we do not stop until the threat is gone." He cut the channel and turned back to the star map, where countless red icons still marked swarm-infested systems. "We're not done," he said softly. "Not until there's nothing left of them." The galaxy trembled. The destruction of CHYRK Prime had not broken the swarm. It had enraged it. Sensors across the Perseid expanse screamed warnings as the Kithaeron mustered their full might, millions of bioships, converging on a single system. They came in a tide so vast that even hardened veterans on Rourke's bridge fell silent at the sight. Estimate? Commander Hale asked. 2.6 million signatures, the AI reported flatly. Largest swarm concentration ever recorded. Hale turned to Rourke. Sir, they're coming for us. Rourke didn't flinch. Good. He looked around at his officers, his voice iron. This is the battle. If we break them here, the war ends. If we fail, he let the silence stretch, heavy as a funeral bell. Then humanity dies standing. The fleet prepared like wolves before the storm. On every ship, technicians reloaded magazines, primed plasma cores, and rearmed missile bays. Engineers worked side by side with Legion armorers, checking every exosuit joint and weapon calibration. On the Vengeance, the Legionnaires stood in lines across the hangar, silent and still, waiting for the order to drop. Private Kira Vance checked her rifle one last time, then glanced at her squad. Their armor was scorched, their faces drawn from weeks of battle, but their eyes still burned. This is it, she said quietly. No fallback. No retreat. We hold the line here, or there won't be anything left to hold. Her squad nodded. They were Deathworlders, born to fight, trained to win, ready to die if that was the cost. The swarm arrived like a living nightfall. The first wave struck in silence, black shapes blotting out the stars as they dropped from hyperspace. Then the void lit up in fire. Humanity's fleet opened up with everything it had, rail slugs, plasma lances, missile storms. Entire hive ships were vaporized before they could close to firing range. But still they came. Kithaeron dread organisms plowed forward, vomiting swarms of fighters and boarding spores. The Vengeance shook as impacts rang across her hull, alarms screaming as sections were breached. Seal the decks. Rourke roared. All hands to battle stations. Deploy the legions. The drop pods rained again, this time into open space. They were fired like slugs directly into boarding spores and onto the hulls of Kithaeron capital ships. The pods split open, spilling legionnaires into zero-gravity combat. Kira's pod slammed into the carapace of a hive ship, magnets locking to the surface. She and her squad spilled out, rifles spitting blue fire. Breach the hull, she shouted. Charges went off in a series of deafening flashes, blowing open tunnels into the living ship. The humans charged inside, killing everything that moved. Inside was a nightmare of flesh corridors and pulsing organs. Drones poured in from every angle, but the legionnaires cut them down, fighting room to room until they reached the ship's core. Plant the charge, Kira ordered. They set a fusion warhead at the heart of the ship. Kira keyed the detonation timer and spoke into the comm. Package armed. Get us out. They fought their way back out as the timer ticked down. When they leapt from the hull into space, their thrusters flared, and behind them, the hive ship tore itself apart in a star-bright explosion. But the swarm did not stop. Wave after wave crashed against the fleet. Ships died screaming, frigates torn in half, destroyers swallowed whole by living carriers. For every hive ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. Rourke stood on the command deck, his expression carved from stone. Time to deploy the purge array, he said grimly. The bridge fell silent. The purge array was Earth's most terrible weapon, a relic of a war so ancient no one spoke of it openly. Even Hale hesitated. Sir, if we fire that, we end this war, Rourke cut in. Or we all die here. There's no third option. He keyed the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Rourke. All hands, brace for purge array activation. This is our last strike. Make it count. The Vengeance's superstructure split open, revealing the massive spire of the purge array. Energy bled into the void, turning night into white. One by one, the fleet's remaining dreadnoughts linked power into the array, feeding it until its core burned like a newborn sun. Then Rourke gave the order. Fire. A single beam lanced across the void, white-hot, pure, unstoppable. It swept across the swarm like the scythe of a god, cutting through ship after ship, boiling them alive where they stood. Entire flotillas went dark in seconds. On CHYRRK's remnant colonies, survivors watched as the sky lit with what looked like dawn. When the beam faded, silence reigned. Where millions of swarm signatures had been, only drifting wreckage remained. The survivors broke into cheers, sobs, and prayers. In the aftermath, the fleet limped back together. Hundreds of ships were gone. Thousands of legionnaires would never return. But humanity had done it. On the landing deck of the Vengeance, Kira removed her helmet and breathed in the recycled air, heavy with the smell of ozone and battle. "It's over," one of her squad whispered. Kira shook her head. "Not over," she said. "But we bought the galaxy time. And they know now." She looked out the viewport at the burning remains of the swarm. "When Earth hears the cry for help, we answer. And we don't stop until the screaming ends." Admiral Rourke stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage until the last fire guttered out. "Transmit this to every world," he said. A single, final message pulsed out across the stars. The cry for help was heard. The Deathworld answered. Humanity stands ready for the next call. And across the galaxy, those who had once dismissed Earth now spoke its name with something very close to reverence. Because they understood now. When the galaxy screamed, Earth didn't just send help. It sent its legions. And nothing survived their coming.